That evening, I was standing in the middle of a banquet hall with a broken wine glass at my feet, while my wife, with a carefully rehearsed tear quivering in her voice, was extending me divorce papers. Zhou Mingyu, vice president of Megacorp, my old high school nightmare, and as a bonus, my wife's lover, slowly nudged a shard of glass toward my foot with the tip of his polished shoe. "Clean it up for old time's sake, you bum," he said it with the smile of a man who genuinely believed he had just won something. And my father-in-law, Lin Jin, the CEO of Megacorp, the man who for 5 years had looked at me the way one looks at a stain on an expensive carpet, stood off to the side and laughed so hard that his jowls actually shook. 500 guests. The entire business elite of the city. They were all looking at me, all of them waiting for the moment I would start crying or screaming. I smiled. 5 years I spent washing their floors. Tonight I'll be buying their whole house. That thought passed through my head as calmly as if I were considering what to have for breakfast. My wife took a small step closer. She placed one tiny foot, wearing a shoe worth 10 months of my salary, in front of the other, adjusted her dress. Her tear had been rehearsed down to the millimeter. It was rolling down her cheek, along exactly the route where it wouldn't smudge her makeup. "How?" she said in the gentle voice of a great actress. "I can't do this anymore. Sign, leave quietly. The way you came in with empty hands." I looked at her for 5 seconds and thought, "You actually believe I'm going to walk out with empty hands? My God, am I about to surprise you tonight? If you want a ceremony," I said out loud, very calmly, "you'll get a ceremony. Only at this one, I won't be the husband anymore. I'll be the owner." The hall went so quiet, I could hear Zhou's teeth grinding. My wife blinked. Once. A trained, helpless little blink. My father-in-law stopped laughing. "What are you babbling about, you tramp?" Zhou snapped. I slowly reached into the inner pocket of my jacket and pulled out a phone. An old phone, scratched, with a crack across the screen. I had carried it for 5 years while mopping toilets on the 17th floor. "Calling your mother?" My wife snorted, and she added, specifically for the audience, "Poor thing, his mother died 3 years ago." The hall let out a polite little chuckle. My father-in-law smiled again. I unlocked the phone. One act, one last act as a husband, and it all ends. I tapped a single button. At that exact moment, my father-in-law's phone began to ring. 5 years before that, I was standing in Lin Jin's office, staring down at a piece of paper bearing what was supposedly my father's signature. The signature was not his. I knew every curve of his hand. My father wrote the character Lin with a long, sweeping tail at the second stroke, as if he were drawing comets. On this paper, the tail was short and neat, clearly drawn by a woman's hand. The kind of forgery a first-year law student could pull off for 3,000 yuan and a lunch break. The debt, 800 million, card debt, allegedly. Allegedly, my father had lost it in a single night at Lin Jin's underground gambling club. Allegedly. "My boy," Lin Jin said, wearing the face of a kindly grandfather, "your father has left you in a very uncomfortable position. 800 million yuan. You don't have that kind of money? Your family will end up on the street, but I'm prepared to forgive the whole debt." He paused for effect. I said nothing. "I'll give you my daughter, Lin Yue. You'll enter the family. We'll forget the debt. Consider it a wedding gift." I looked at him, then at the signature, then at him again. "You just killed my father with that piece of paper," I thought. "He'll die of a stroke in 6 months because he'll be too ashamed to look me in the eye. You don't know it yet, but you've just signed your own sentence." "I accept," I said out loud. Lin Jin broke into a wide smile. A wise boy. "You see? Sometimes waiting beats fighting." And sometimes, I thought, the smartest move is to play dead. So they leave you alone and quietly dig the foundation out from under their own house. That same evening, I signed the marriage contract, with one small condition, that my surname be recorded as a secondary name, not primary. Lin Jin didn't even notice that he had just personally constructed a legal loophole through which 5 years later, I would walk out without owing him a single yuan. An hour after the ceremony, my so-called wife left on business. I would later learn that business went by the name of Zhou Mingyu and called her from the same number that had been ringing her phone for 3 days before the wedding. I sat alone in the guest room, not in the master bedroom. They hadn't let me anywhere near it. The second floor of the villa in the room kept for household staff, and then a voice spoke inside my head. Mega cashback system activated. Every yuan spent in genuine humility will be returned to the owner, multiplied by 10,000. Good luck. I sat there, silent, staring at my hands. They wanted to make a janitor out of me, I thought. They had no idea they had just handed me the keys to their own safe. What happened next is best shown in montage. Otherwise you'll get bored, and I really don't like that. So, the system. Mega cashback. I worked out the rules in the first week, by trial and error, like a normal person poking around in a new app. That evening, I was standing in the middle of a banquet hall with a broken wine glass at my feet, while my wife, with a carefully rehearsed tear quivering in her voice, was extending me divorce papers. Zhou Mingyu, vice president of Megacorp, my old high school nightmare, and as a bonus, my wife's lover, slowly nudged a shard of glass toward my foot with the tip of his polished shoe. "Clean it up for old time's sake, you bum." He said it with the smile of a man who genuinely believed he had just won something. And my father-in-law, Lin Jin, the CEO of Megacorp, the man who for 5 years had looked at me the way one looks at a stain on an expensive carpet, stood off to the side and laughed so hard that his jowls actually shook. 500 guests. The entire business elite of the city. They were all looking at me, all of them waiting for the moment I would start crying or screaming. I smiled. 5 years I spent washing their floors. Tonight I'll be buying their whole house. That thought passed through my head as calmly as if I were considering what to have for breakfast. My wife took a small step closer. She placed one tiny foot, wearing a shoe worth 10 months of my salary, in front of the other, adjusted her dress. Her tear had been rehearsed down to the millimeter. It was rolling down her cheek, along exactly the route where it wouldn't smudge her makeup. "How?" she said in the gentle voice of a great actress. "I can't do this anymore. Sign, leave quietly. The way you came in with empty hands." I looked at her for 5 seconds and thought, "You actually believe I'm going to walk out with empty hands? My God, am I about to surprise you tonight? If you want a ceremony," I said out loud, very calmly, "you'll get a ceremony. Only at this one, I won't be the husband anymore. I'll be the owner." The hall went so quiet, I could hear Zhou's teeth grinding. My wife blinked. Once. A trained, helpless little blink. My father-in-law stopped laughing. "What are you babbling about, you tramp?" Zhou snapped. I slowly reached into the inner pocket of my jacket and pulled out a phone. An old phone, scratched, with a crack across the screen. I had carried it for 5 years while mopping toilets on the 17th floor. "Calling your mother?" My wife snorted, and she added, specifically for the audience, "Poor thing. His mother died 3 years ago." The hall let out a polite little chuckle. My father-in-law smiled again. I unlocked the phone. One act, one last act as a husband, and it all ends. I tapped a single button. At that exact moment, my father-in-law's phone began to ring. 5 years before that, I was standing in Lin Jin's office, staring down at a piece of paper bearing what was supposedly my father's signature. The signature was not his. I knew every curve of his hand. My father wrote the character Lin with a long, sweeping tail at the second stroke, as if he were drawing comets. On this paper, the tail was short and neat, clearly drawn by a woman's hand. The kind of forgery a first-year law student could pull off for 3,000 yuan and a lunch break. The debt, 800 million, card debt, allegedly. Allegedly, my father had lost it in a single night at Lin Jin's underground gambling club. Allegedly. "My boy," Lin Jin said, wearing the face of a kindly grandfather, "your father has left you in a very uncomfortable position. 800 million yuan. You don't have that kind of money? Your family will end up on the street, but I'm prepared to forgive the whole debt." He paused for effect. I said nothing. "I'll give you my daughter, Lin Yue. You'll enter the family. We'll forget the debt. Consider it a wedding gift." I looked at him, then at the signature, then at him again. "You just killed my father with that piece of paper," I thought. "He'll die of a stroke in 6 months because he'll be too ashamed to look me in the eye. You don't know it yet, but you've just signed your own sentence." "I accept," I said out loud. Lin Jin broke into a wide smile. "A wise boy. You see? Sometimes waiting beats fighting." And sometimes, I thought, the smartest move is to play dead. so they leave you alone and quietly dig the foundation out from under their own house. That same evening, I signed the marriage contract, with one small condition, that my surname be recorded as a secondary name, not primary. Lin Jin didn't even notice that he had just personally constructed a legal loophole through which 5 years later, I would walk out without owing him a single yuan. An hour after the ceremony, my so-called wife left on business. I would later learn that business went by the name of Zhou Mingyu and called her from the same number that had been ringing her phone for 3 days before the wedding. I sat alone in the guest room, not in the master bedroom. They hadn't let me anywhere near it. The second floor of the villa in the room kept for household staff, and then a voice spoke inside my head. Mega cashback system activated. Every yuan spent in genuine humility will be returned to the owner, multiplied by 10,000. Good luck. I sat there, silent, staring at my hands. They wanted to make a janitor out of me, I thought. They had no idea they had just handed me the keys to their own safe. What happened next is best shown in montage. Otherwise, you'll get bored, and I really don't like that. So, the system. Mega cashback. I worked out the rules in the first week, by trial and error, like a normal person poking around in a new app. You spend a yuan on a bowl of cheap noodles, you get back 10,000. You spend a yuan on something showy, on a new watch or a designer wallet, you get back nothing. The more you flaunt, the lower the multiplier. The system's logic was simple. Sincere humility multiplied by service, multiplied by silence, and the heaviest condition of all, manual labor gave you a direct multiplier. Cleaning a toilet, times 3. Helping the poor anonymously, times 7. Swallowing an insult without responding, times 10. I spent a couple of evenings sitting on a couch with a calculator. By the end of the week, I knew this. If I worked as a janitor for 5 years in the most ostentatious building in the city, spent my entire salary on instant noodles, cheap tea, and anonymous charity, and absorbed at least 20 insults a day from my father-in-law and his court, my capital would grow by 10 to 12 orders of magnitude. I wrote the plan on a single sheet of A4 paper. The title was, How to Become the Richest Man in This City by Mopping Its Bathrooms. Then I burned the sheet, because my system had a habit of penalizing showmanship. Year 1, my janitor's salary was 4,000 yuan a month. All of it went to noodles, tea, and quiet transfers to orphanages. My system account, 100,000 yuan. Year 1 also. My father-in-law laughed so hard a nut actually fell out of his mouth. Are you serious? He said. The son of my old friend? Well, go ahead, son. We'll even give you the uniform for free. I put on the uniform. My system account at that moment was already at 100,000. Year 2, my wife brought Zhou home for the first time as a friend of the family. She asked me to serve them tea in the living room. I served. Zhou drank my tea in front of her and then deliberately spilled it on his own knees. Oh dear, he said. What clumsy servants you have, Madam Lin. My wife laughed. I silently brought him a napkin. My system ticked, plus 5 million yuan. Year 3, at Megacorp's corporate party, Zhou ostentatiously waved me over to their table, sat me down at an empty chair. Stay here, he said. We're discussing friends. You'll appreciate the company. Your family, after all. Everyone laughed. I sat there for half an hour, silent, listening to them discuss what kind of villa my father-in-law would give Zhou for his 30th birthday. System, plus 2 billion. Year 4, in the kitchen, in my presence. My wife told a girlfriend that our marriage had been forced and that she was only tolerating the cockroach out of pity for her father. I was cleaning the oven at that moment, scrubbing it with lemon spray. I didn't turn around. System plus 50 billion. I could have bought the villa at that point, through shell companies, and I did 2 days later, buying it from a firm that secretly belonged to my fund. My father-in-law never noticed. Year 5, I was cleaning the VIP bathroom on the 17th floor. Zhou walked into the stall, saw me, smirked, and instead of just leaving and using the next stall, like a normal human being, he unzipped his pants and said, Hey Roach, hold the door for me. I don't want to touch it with my hand. I held the door, in silence. System ticked, plus 800 billion yuan, and then a new message appeared.
You have reached 1 trillion. You may exit.
I held the door until he was done, nodded at Joe, closed it behind him, washed my hands, looked at myself in the mirror. Well then, I thought, 5 years, 1 trillion, time to return the tip. 1 hour before I shattered that wine glass in the banquet hall, my wife was sitting in front of a mirror in her dressing room, putting on her lipstick. Joe was standing behind her, undoing his bow tie. "Are you sure he'll sign it?" he asked. She looked at him in the mirror and rolled her eyes. "Mingyu, this man spent 5 years silently mopping toilets. 5 years. He'll sign anything you put in front of him. And if he starts shouting or tears up the papers, then I'll cry in front of 500 guests," she said. She blinked. The tear ran down her cheek perfectly. "How's that? Bravo." They looked at each other and laughed. "In a year," Joe said, "I'll be CEO. You'll be my wife. We'll have a villa in Switzerland and a house in Cannes. That worm won't get in the way." "He never got in the way," she said, fixing her lashes. "He doesn't know how." "And his last name? Will Lin Hao stay in the Lin household register after the divorce?" "My father's already arranged it. In a week his surname gets struck out. He'll be nameless again, the way he was." They laughed again. She stood up, smoothed her dress, picked up the folder with the documents. "Let's go. The guests are waiting for the ceremony?" "Let's go," I would have thought if I had been there. "Only the ceremony you're about to get isn't quite the one you've prepared for." Back in the banquet hall, everyone was looking at my father-in-law. His phone was ringing, loudly. Megacorp's corporate ringtone, that short, brassy little fanfare. He pulled out the phone, frowning. It was the chairman of the board of directors, at 9 in the evening on a Saturday, during a gala.
"What is it?"
He barked, annoyed.
"I'm busy."
And at that moment, his face turned the color of curdled sour cream. My wife froze. The folder of documents tilted slightly in her hand. One sheet started to slide out, Joe's brow knit, and I stood there with my phone in hand, watching it all play out, perfectly calm. One click, I thought. 1,200,000,000,000 yuan. Megacorp Holdings, mine. My father-in-law slowly lowered the phone. "Lin Hao," he said in a voice I had never heard him use before. "What did you do?" Before I tell you what happened next, and a lot of things happened next, believe me, I need to rewind, because otherwise you won't understand how a naked janitor in a cheap suit bought a 1,000,000,000,000 yuan holding company in 30 seconds using a cracked phone. That, doesn't happen every day. So, the mega cashback system, I figured out the rules in the first week, by trial and error, the way any normal person fiddles with an unfamiliar app. The interface didn't have buttons. There was no menu. There was just a voice in my head and a number that quietly ticked upward every time I did something the system approved of. You spend 1 yuan on instant noodles, 10,000 come back. You spend 1 yuan on something flashy, a fancy watch, a leather wallet, a piece of conspicuous nonsense, 0. The more you flaunt, the smaller the return. The system's underlying logic was simple, almost biblical, sincere humility, multiplied by service, multiplied by silence. And the fattest condition of all was manual labor as a direct multiplier, mopping a toilet times 3, helping the poor anonymously times 7, swallowing an insult without reacting times 10. Each of those multipliers compounded with the others. 5 years of compound interest on humiliation that, it turns out, is one of the best investment instruments in human history. It's just that nobody markets it. I spent several evenings sitting on a cheap couch with a calculator, working out the curve. By the end of the week, I knew the answer. If I spent 5 years working as a janitor in the most ostentatious building in the city, dumped every paycheck on noodles, tea, and anonymous donations, and absorbed at least 20 insults a day from my father-in-law and his entourage, my capital would grow by 10 to 12 orders of magnitude. I wrote the plan out on a single sheet of A4 paper. The title at the top read, "How to Become the Richest Man in This City by Mopping Its Bathrooms." Then I burned the sheet. Because my system, as I had already noticed, had a particular allergy to showmanship, even private showmanship. Even writing the plan down had cost me a small portion of the multiplier. I learned my lesson. In year 1, my janitor's salary was 4,000 yuan a month. All of it went to noodles, tea, and quiet transfers to orphanages. My system account at the end of that year sat at 100,000 yuan. By year 2, 50 million. By year 3, 10 billion. By year 4, 200 billion. By year 5, 1 trillion. Halfway through year 2, I opened an anonymous investment fund through 4 shell lawyers in 3 jurisdictions. I called it Black Bread because I had a sense of humor, and because nobody takes a fund called Black Bread seriously. And being underestimated was, by then, my favorite professional tactic. Within a year, Black Bread was in the top 50 investment funds in Asia. Within 2, top 10, in a closed analytical chat that held 40 members from all over the planet. My handle was Cicada. Nobody knew my face, my age, or my voice. They knew only that Cicada was never wrong, and that was where I met TT, wrote in short sentences. T never used emojis. T could collapse an entire sector of the Asian markets with a single line. Had one strange tick. After a successful trade, she would write LOL, followed by 3 dots. LOL. That was the entirety of her emotional range, as far as the rest of us could see. We corresponded for 2 years. We executed 18 joint trades for a combined value comparable to the GDP of a small European country. I had never seen her face. I did not know her name. What I did know about her was 3 things. T was a woman. She was somewhere around 28, and at one specific moment, in the middle of one specific trade, she had written a single line in the chat, after which I understood. With absolute clarity, she knew I was Cicada, and she knew who I was in real life. I will not show you that line. It belongs to the 2 of us, on the 3rd basement level of Megacorp headquarters. In a closet roughly the size of an elevator, lived Old Wang. Not lived in the sense of paying rent. Old Wang spent 12 hours of every day in that closet. He was the head janitor. 62 years old, face like a dried apricot, hands like the roots of an old tree, and a smile like the smile of a man who hasn't seen anything good in 40 years, but has somehow forgotten to forget how to smile. On my first day, he silently nodded at a stool across from his locker and poured boiling water into a battered metal mug. Tea, he said, cheap but hot. I drank it. It was the best tea I had ever tasted in my life. Not because of the tea, because nobody had poured anything for me without an ulterior motive in a very long time. Lin Hao, I said.
I know,
said Old Wang, the boss's son-in-law. Everybody knows. Then why did you give me tea? Everyone else spits on me from above. Old Wang thought about it for a second. Because a son-in-law of the boss who chooses to mop floors, he said, is either a very stupid man or a very clever one, and in both cases, he needs a hot mug. I didn't laugh that time. Something got stuck in my throat, and the system ticked, plus 500,000 yuan. Not for the tea, my system understood, for the fact that you felt warmth for the first time in 5 years. A month later, Old Wang started calling me son. A year later, he mentioned just once that he had a granddaughter, 7 years old. An orphan, her parents had been killed in a car crash. She lived with him in a single shared room in the workers' dormitory. She had a congenital heart defect. The surgery cost 800,000 yuan. The state would cover half. Over his entire life, Wang had saved up 120. He told me this exactly once, one time, in 1 year, and then never mentioned it again. Did not ask, did not hint, did not bring it up the next morning, or the next month, or the next year. I walked out of his closet, took the elevator up to the 17th floor, finished my shift of bathrooms, went home, opened my laptop, and inside of 15 minutes, I had transferred 800,000 yuan as an anonymous donation to the account of City Pediatric Cardiology Clinic number 3, with a note attached, for patient Wang Linlin, full coverage of surgery. The system ticked, plus 8 billion yuan. It was the single most profitable investment I made in 5 years. 3 weeks later, Old Wang came in to work in the morning with red, swollen eyes. He sat down, poured the tea, was silent for a long time. Then he said, "Son, a miracle happened. Some kind person, all of it. They paid for everything." I sipped my tea and nodded, as if I had no idea what he was talking about. "I thought God had forgotten about us," Wang said. "Turns out he was just thinking about it for a long time." I nodded again. "Not God," I thought. Just an old man who has nobody left in the world he wants to hold, and a strange boy whom fate has dropped at his elbow. So the boy can quietly give something back to the world while he is busy burning the rest of it down. In parallel, I was doing another kind of work. Every day I cleaned the floor Zhou Mingyu sat on. I knew his schedule by heart, from 8 to 9 in the morning, while he was in his executive meeting, from 12 to 1 while he was at lunch, from 5 to 6 in the evening, while he was on the rooftop gym. In those 3 windows, I entered his office, mopped the floor, wiped his desk, watered his potted cactus, and along the way, I plugged a tiny flash drive into his computer. It copied everything: transactions, email, personal photos, voice memos, everything. Within 6 months, I knew his entire financial network. Within a year, which government officials he had on retainer. Within 2, where he was keeping his mistresses, apart from my wife. Within 3, the locations of all his offshore accounts. Within 4, all 12 shell companies through which he was siphoning billions out of Megacorp. By the 5th year, I had a folder 8 gigabytes in size. Inside, the entire life of Zhou Mingyu, in documents, enough to put him away for 20+ years. With receipts, with video, with copies of every wire transfer, with voice recordings. I never once opened that folder for entertainment. It wasn't a folder, it was a sentence. I stored it in 3 places. 1 copy was sitting on T's encrypted server, though she did not know it had come from me. I never rushed him. I would think every time I watched Zhou drop $1,000,000 at the casino without blinking. The more he steals, the longer the sentence. I'm fattening his sentence the way a farmer fattens a pig for slaughter, and the system would tick, plus 200 billion yuan. Patience, the system informed me one evening, almost philosophically, is the best multiplier of all. The morning of the gala, I came into work the way I always did, nodded at the security guard at the gate, nodded at the girl at reception, took the elevator down to the 3rd basement, stopped in at old Wang's closet. Wang poured my tea. In silence. The tea was, as always, cheap and hot. "Son," he said, staring into his mug, "I heard Madam Lin is planning to do something tonight. At the gala." I nodded. "Something to do with you," he added. "I know. Documents. I know." He was silent for a long time. "Are you about to leave Megacorp?" "Leave Megacorp." I said, "No. I'm going to take Megacorp with me." Old Wang looked at me for a long time. Carefully, and for the first time in 5 years, he smiled at the corner of his mouth, the way people smile when they have finally understood something they have suspected from the beginning. "That's what I thought," he said. I finished my tea, put down the mug, stood up. "Old man," I said, "after tonight I'm going to offer you something. Please accept it." "I'll accept it before you say it, son." I nodded, walked out into the corridor, pulled out my phone, dialed a number I knew by heart but had never used. 1 ring, 2 rings, 3. A sleepy voice. A woman. Cicada. "Tonight?" "Tonight," I said. "Be ready." "I've been ready for 2 years," she said. "Black or white?" "White." "Good. See you this evening," and she hung up. I stood in the corridor for a moment, closed my eyes. For 5 years I have woken up every morning and told myself, just 1 more day, and then 1 more. Today will be the last one. Opened my eyes, lifted my head, went to the locker room to change into the cheap suit I had bought 2 years ago on a clearance rack, specifically for this evening. The suit was orange-brown, slightly wrinkled, and didn't fit me well. It was the best suit of my entire life, because in that suit, I was going to walk out of the gala as the god of this city. Okay, enough of the past. We're going back into the hall, where my father-in-law's face had just begun to drop. Let me remind you where we left off. I had tapped a single button on my battered phone. My father-in-law's phone had begun to ring. The man on the other end of the line was the chairman of Megacorp's board of directors, a man my father-in-law had personally installed 8 years ago. A man who, when speaking to my father-in-law, used the formal you with a capital letter. And that same man, the one who said you with a capital letter, had just said, "Mr. Lin Jin, we have an emergency board meeting. New majority shareholder is demanding your immediate resignation." My father-in-law blinked once, very slowly, as if blinking might help him digest what he had just heard. "What new majority shareholder?" he asked in a voice that had lost all trace of laughter. The chairman was quiet for a beat. Tang Lin Capital, Mr. Lin Jin. They just acquired 68% of the shares. 40 minutes ago, there was no transaction. Now there is. My father-in-law slowly lowered the phone, looked at me, and said, in that strange voice I had already privately christened, the voice of a man who realizes he is being finished off, Lin Hao. What did you do? At that moment, in the banquet hall, a small apocalypse began. The guests, people whose nervous systems are wired directly to live market data feeds, felt it before my father-in-law did. All of their notifications went off, simultaneously. 300, 400 phones were pulled from breast pockets and clutches in a single coordinated movement. 300, 400 screens lit up at once, and a silence, a true dead silence, began to creep across the room like a fog rolling in. Somebody dropped a champagne flute. Glass shattered with a sound so sharp that several people flinched. My wife slowly turned her head. "Papa," she said. Her voice trembled for the first time that night. Not theatrically, for real. "Papa, what's happening?" My father-in-law did not answer. He was staring at me the way one stares at one's own death when one is informed it has arrived in the form of a pizza delivery boy. "Papa?" Joe slowly pulled out his own phone. I knew every gesture he had made in 12 years. I could have predicted them with my eyes closed. He swiped his thumb across the screen. A notification, a news feed, something, and his face turned the color of spoiled milk. He's just opened his email, I thought, watching him. He sees the subject line. It reads, "Emergency Audit of Financial Department. Signed, new CEO." 2 seconds later, his phone rang. He didn't answer. A second phone rang. He didn't answer. A third, which I knew was his own CFO, who at that precise moment was standing outside Joe's office door with a folder of documents and a group of men in plain gray suits. Joe slowly slid his phone back into his pocket and began, very delicately, as if he believed nobody would notice, to drift sideways toward one of the side doors. I smiled at him. "Go ahead, little friend. Run. Let's see exactly where this building runs out of exits." The shattered wine glass was still lying at my feet. I bent down, picked up a single shard, placed it carefully on a silver tray being carried past by a waiter. The waiter froze, unsure of how to react. "Thank you," I said to him. "You have a difficult job tonight. It's going to be even more so." The waiter nodded, like a student in front of a stern teacher. I turned toward the stage, walked up the 3 steps, approached the master of ceremonies, a famous TV host whose face I had seen 100 times in corporate news segments. Tonight, he was being paid 200,000 yuan to formally announce my shameful exit from the family. At this exact moment, he looked as though he had just seen a ghost. "May I have the microphone?" I said. It wasn't a question. He handed it over. His hands were trembling. I remembered that, a year ago, this man had made a joke about the part-time son-in-law at a megacorp corporate event, and the whole room had laughed, and my father-in-law had winked and raised a toast in his honor. "Thank you," I said to him, and added, more quietly, just for him, "In 5 minutes, someone is going to offer you a show on our channel. Accept it. The salary will be 3 times higher." He blinked, nodded, stepped back. I turned to the room. 500 faces were looking at me. 300 phones were recording. My wife was not moving. My father-in-law was not moving. Joe had frozen by the side door. I tapped the microphone. The sound system caught. "Good evening," I said in a calm voice. "My name is Lin Hao. Most of you know me as the son-in-law of Mr. Lin Jin. A smaller number of you know me as the janitor on the 17th floor. Somewhere in the room, a nervous chuckle. I would like to make a single announcement. At 1947 local time tonight, I acquired the controlling stake in Megacorp Holdings, 68%. The transaction total is 1,200 billion yuan. The silence in the hall became dense enough to slice. As of this moment, I continued, Lin Jin is no longer the CEO of Megacorp. The board of directors is currently voting on his removal. I believe the vote will conclude in approximately 3 minutes, unanimously. My wife let out a soft gasp. Her usually well-rehearsed swoon, for once, sounded real. "This is a hoax," someone in the room said. The voice was uncertain. I smiled. "Check your phones." 300 phones lit up again, 300 news feeds, 300 headlines. Tang Lin Capital acquires controlling stake in Megacorp Holdings for 1,200 billion yuan. Somebody said, God. Somebody said this can't be. Somebody more bluntly swore at length under their breath. My wife was staring at me. Her eyes had gone round like two black wells. How? She whispered. This isn't. It is, I said gently. Wife, for 5 years you have lived with the richest man in this room, and you have never once looked him in the eye. 24 kilometers away from the banquet hall, in a glass conference room on the 43rd floor of a downtown office tower, 9 men in expensive watches sat around a circular table. On the screen before them was a yellow countdown timer. Below it, a single line. Vote on the immediate dismissal of CEO Lin Jin at the request of majority shareholder Tang Lin Capital. Decision required within 3 minutes. The chairman of the board, gray-haired, tired, and long since playing his own game, looked around at his colleagues. Gentlemen, he said, I think we all understand the situation. Tang Lin Capital is not a party we improvise with. They hold 68%. If we say no, the new owner will simply dissolve the board and appoint a fresh one within 48 hours. One of the directors raised a finger. And if one of us, he asked cautiously, were to support Mr. Lin Jin? The chairman looked at him slowly. Then that one of us is going to be looking for new employment tomorrow morning, and he is unlikely to find any in this city. The finger lowered. We vote, said the chairman, all in favor of removing Lin Jin. Raise your hand. 9 hands went up at once, including the chairman's. Unanimous approved. And the chairman pressed send. My father-in-law was standing in the banquet hall, reading the notification on his phone. I was watching his face during this. From 5 meters away, microphone in hand, I was recording every micro-expression. I had waited 5 years for this. I had earned it. I was not going to blink. His face slowly, millimeter by millimeter, took on the color of old parchment. He lowered the phone, took a step toward me. Then another, climbed the stage. The master of ceremonies surrendered his spot with the readiness of a man yielding ground in a minefield. My father-in-law approached the microphone, put his hand on my shoulder, squeezed. How? He said quietly, leaning close to my ear so the microphone wouldn't pick him up. Son, let's talk, man to man. I know I have not been perfect, but we are family. The Lin name belongs to you too. I slowly turned my head toward him. Mr. Lin Jin, I said into the microphone, loudly, so that the entire room of 500 could hear. Please remove your hand from my shoulder. He pulled his hand back, as if it had touched a hot iron. The Lin name, I continued, is the name of the woman you forged on a marriage certificate in order to sell off my father's debt. That is not family. That is bookkeeping. I am no longer part of that ledger. In the audience, a woman tiredly murmured, Oh my God. My father-in-law was blinking quickly. He tried to speak, found no words, and turned toward his bodyguards who had been stationed at the edges of the stage. 4 large men in black suits, Megacorp Internal Security. Remove him, he said to security. His voice cracked, but he tried to hold the tone. This is a private event. He has no right. The 4 bodyguards did not move. He blinked. I said remove him. The senior security officer, a large man with a scar above one eyebrow, whose name was Chen, whom I had nodded to in the hallway every morning for 5 years, slowly took out his own phone, looked at the screen, looked at my father-in-law, and said in the calm voice of a professional, My apologies, Mr. Lin Jin. As of 1949, Megacorp Security reports to the new majority shareholder, We are not authorized to act on your instruction. Chen turned his head toward me. Mr. Lin Hao, your orders, sir. I smiled. No orders, Chen. Just make sure Mr. Lin Jin does not do anything foolish. And please give my respects to your wife. Chen nodded, without so much as a blink. My father-in-law, at this point, did something genuinely amusing. He attempted to sit down, just to lower himself onto a chair. There was no chair nearby, and for a brief moment, from the side, he appeared to hang in midair in a half squat, and then he simply lowered himself onto the floor of the stage, beside the microphone stand. He did not fall. He sat. 5 years ago, this man was sitting in his office, forging my father's signature. Tonight, he was sitting on the floor at my feet. Symmetry, I thought. I love symmetry. Joe had nearly reached the side door when its doors opened from the outside, and 4 men in stern gray suits walked into the hall. They were not in uniform. Exactly. They were dressed like men who do not need a uniform. The one at the front had a federal financial enforcement badge in his hand, and he opened it on the move, unhurried, the way a man opens a business card holder. "Mr. Zhou Mingyu," he said calmly. "Financial Crimes Division. Pursuant to a court warrant, we have authorization to search your office and personal premises, to seize all related documentation, and to detain you for 72 hours in connection with an ongoing investigation into embezzlement at exceptionally large scale. Come with us, please." Joe froze. His face had become the color of a frog that had just been placed in a refrigerator, a swampy green with gray undertones along his cheekbones. He took a step backward. "This is a mistake," he said. This is not a mistake, Mr. Zhou. We have 8 gigabytes of documentation on you. Of those, 6 gigabytes consist of your handwriting, your voice, and your banking signature. We know the exact amounts, the exact accounts, and the exact dates. Come with us." Joe turned. He looked across the room, through 500 guests, past my collapsed father-in-law, past my still frozen wife, past me holding the microphone. He looked me directly in the eye. I looked back. 12 years ago, I thought, very calmly. You broke my arm in the school gymnasium and told the teacher I had fallen. 12 years ago, you took the girl I liked by telling her I had dumped her. Tonight, I am watching them put handcuffs on you in a banquet hall full of 500 people. I have waited 12 years for this. I am not going to blink. And I did not blink. Joe lowered his head. One of the gray-suited men took his elbow. The second took his other elbow. And they walked him calmly, without a struggle, back across the hall, toward the main exit. On the way, they passed my wife. She visibly recoiled from him, demonstratively, so that everyone could see. Joe tried to say something to her. She pretended not to hear. Oh, I thought, with genuine interest. We are already at the drowning rats biting each other stage. Already? That fast? Children, you had a joint plan. Whatever happened to solidarity? On the top floor of the Megacorp building, in a wood-paneled office that overlooked half the city, there was one man who had not yet fully grasped what had happened. That man was my father-in-law, only in his imagination. In reality, he was sitting on the floor of the banquet stage, staring at the carpet. But in his office, on the top floor, it was empty, and the mirror-finished desk reflected only the ceiling. 10 minutes later, after Megacorp security politely escorted him upstairs to compose himself before the press, he would sit in his leather chair, take out his phone, and begin dialing. Friend number 1, Deputy Minister of Industry. A long friendship, 10 years of joint hunting trips, 2 daughters in the same university program. Jin, I've heard. Old friend? Help me, Tanglin. It's Jin, I'm sorry. Tanglin is not at the level of my ministry. Tanglin is at the level where I very quietly hang up the phone and pretend we have never met. Don't call me. Ever. Good luck. Dial tone. Friend number 2, chairman of a regional bank. Jin, not now, dial tone. Friend number 3, a media baron, owner of the 3 largest news outlets in the city. Lin Jin, Tanglin bought my holding company 4 hours ago. I work for the new owner now, and I would prefer not to be receiving calls like this one. Dial tone. My father-in-law would set the phone down on the desk, stare out the window for a long time. The window faced the city. Lights. Below, on the 25th floor, in the banquet hall, 500 people would be watching his daughter fall to her knees. But that was 20 minutes away. For now, I was standing on the stage with the microphone, and I raised my hand. Ladies and gentlemen, I said into the room, if I may have 1 minute of your attention. And at that moment, the side panels of the main entrance to the banquet hall, marble, heavy, 6 meters tall, began to swing open, without a creak, without a sound, and into the hall walked a woman in a white dress. 7 minutes before the doors of the banquet hall began to swing open, a black limousine had pulled up at the entrance of the building. Inside the limousine, on the back seat, sat a woman. On her lap was a tablet. The tablet was playing a live feed of the Megacorp Gala at that moment. The broadcast was holding a close-up of my father-in-law's face as he sank down onto the stage. She was watching that image without any expression at all, without even a flicker. The way one watches the weather pass by a window. Then she picked up her phone, opened a conversation with one contact. The contact was saved as Cicada. She typed a single line. "I'm here. Should I come in or wait?" The reply arrived in 6 seconds. "Come in. They need to see you standing." She read it, looked out at the lobby through the limousine window. "Igor," she said to the driver, without taking her eyes off the glass. "Hold for 2 more minutes. I'll be walking in without an umbrella. It's dry tonight." "Madam Tang," the driver answered. "Rain is due within the hour." "I know. By then we'll be in my own car." She opened her clutch, took out a small mirror, looked at her own reflection. 2 years of correspondence, she thought. I know his voice better than my own father's. I know how he constructs his sentences. I know which trades he pauses on to think them through. I know that he likes soy sauce with light spice. Tonight, I will finally see his face. She closed the mirror, put it back in the clutch, and the single human gesture in her entire evening. For a brief second, she smiled to herself, at one corner of her mouth. Then the smile vanished, and out of the limousine stepped Tang Wei, 28 years old, CEO of Tang Holdings, the only woman in this city before whom men whose names ended in 9-digit numbers and dollars instinctively stood up, in a white dress, without an entourage, without security, alone. The doors of the main banquet hall entrance were opening slowly, soundlessly. 500 faces turned toward the light, and Tang Wei walked into the room. I had seen her photographs in the news. Everyone had. She didn't give interviews, didn't walk red carpets, but occasionally she was still caught on camera, at business forums, getting off planes, stepping into cars. Those photographs had cost the journalists who took them a great deal of money. In person, she was different. In person, she was taller, calmer, with something in the line of her shoulders that made 300 phones lower themselves back into pockets because filming her seemed indecent. Everyone understood this, without an announcement. She walked through the room along the central aisle between the tables, not quickly, not slowly, at her own pace. She walked past my father-in-law, who was wobbling, trying to stand back up from the floor. She did not look at him. She walked past my wife, who was standing absolutely upright, absolutely motionless, with her mouth slightly open. She did not look at her. She walked past a woman in the second row, a well-known journalist who attempted to say loudly, "Madam Tang, may I ask a question?" The journalist did not finish her sentence. Tang Wei simply looked at her. The murmurs around the room. "That's her. That's Tang Wei. Tang Holdings. She never attends other people's galas. Never. I saw her once at a corporate forum. She was there for 15 minutes and then gone. Hush." Tang Wei stopped at the foot of the stage. I was looking down at her from above. She stopped, raised her head, and for the first time in our lives, after 2 years of correspondence, 18 joint trades, the GDP of a small country in combined turnover, we looked each other in the eye. In the chat, she used to write LOL with 3 dots after it, I thought. In person, she looks like a woman who could buy a country, and her voice, low, level, smileless, but somehow, in some impossible way, warm, said into the silence of the hall. "You're taller than I expected," I answered without thinking. "You're scarier." Somebody in the front row let out a small, "Ah." Somebody else, I think it was the master of ceremonies, laughed nervously. Tang Wei lifted one corner of her mouth slightly. She didn't quite smile. She simply noted. "Give me your hand," she said. "I'm in a dress. The steps are high." I gave her my hand. She came up onto the stage. Her fingers cool, narrow, very steady, rested briefly in my palm. A cool hand, I had time to think, like my mother's in her last month. And I caught myself immediately. Wrong direction, not tonight. She let go of my hand, turned to the room. "May I have the microphone?" she asked, without looking at me. I handed it over. Tang Wei took it, tapped it once. The sound system caught her voice. "Good evening," she said. And her voice, amplified by the system, occupied the entire hall. "My name is Tang Wei. I am the CEO of Tang Holdings." Silence. Everyone in the room knew who she was. This was not an introduction. This was a formality for the record. I came here tonight for one reason. I want all of you to hear this from me personally, rather than from my press office tomorrow morning. A pause, perfectly calibrated. Mr. Lin Hao and I have been business partners for 2 years. 18 transactions. 2 of those transactions, individually, were comparable to the annual defense budget of our country. The room froze. Tonight, we closed our final agreement. Tang Holdings and Lin Capital are merging. The combined market capitalization of the new concern is 3,400 billion yuan. Somebody in the room sat down in a chair. Not from shock, simply because their legs stopped holding them up. I understand, Tang Wei continued, with calm precision, that many of you came here this evening with a different agenda. Many of you came here to watch the son-in-law of Mr. Lin Jin get publicly fired. That was, I admit, not a bad agenda. The agenda has changed somewhat. She turned her head toward me for a second. Mr. Lin Hao is the chairman of the board of the new concern. I am the CEO. This decision was signed and sealed 18 months ago, in writing. Silence again. Somebody in the third row whispered. 18 months, somebody else. It can't be. 18 months ago, Tang Wei said into the room. Mr. Lin Hao was cleaning a toilet on the 17th floor of the building that he yesterday bought from himself. Through a proxy transaction, so that none of you would guess that the buyer and the seller were, in fact, the same person. He was cleaning toilets, and he and I were signing a 3 trillion yuan merger agreement at the same time. The room had gone so quiet that I could hear my wife's throat scratching. For that reason, Tang Wei concluded, I would respectfully recommend that tomorrow morning, each of you review the list of people you have been gossiping about this past week, and consider writing a few apologies. Not to me, to him. She handed me back the microphone and took half a step backward, standing beside me. My wife took a step toward us. I could see her knees trembling, but she walked upright. The trained gait of a CEO's daughter who at age 3 had been made to walk with a book on her head while being told don't drop it. Lin Hao, she said. Her voice shook. This can't, you couldn't have, I'm your wife. I looked at her. Wife, I said evenly. You've lived with me for 5 years. Tell me, what color are my eyes in the morning light? She blinked, opened her mouth, closed it. What kind of noodles do I eat? Silence. What is written in the notebook that has been sitting on the bedside table next to your bed for the past 4 years? My wife stepped backward, and at that moment, Tang Wei, perfectly calmly, as if reading from a card, said into the room, soy sauce, light spice. Not hot. He can't tolerate spicy food. He's had reflux since childhood. The noodles are thin wheat. He boils them for exactly 3 minutes and 20 seconds, counting in his head. The notebook is a moleskine, black, with 3 elastic bands. Inside are handwritten yield calculations. He sleeps with his blanket folded into a triangle, the left corner tucked under his left cheek. He's afraid of clowns with white face paint. It dates back to when he was 6 years old, when a clown with painted features came to a children's party, and he stuttered for 3 weeks afterward. His favorite mug is white, with a chip on the right handle. The book by his bed is Sun Tzu's The Art of War, page 32, with the corner folded down. Tang Wei paused, took one neat breath. That is what I have learned about him in 2 years of correspondence, from the letters of the alphabet in a chat window. And she turned her head to my wife. What do you know about him? After 5 years in the same apartment, my wife was silent. She was standing white as a plate. Sweat had broken out on her forehead, and it was running down through her stage makeup toward her chin. Her painted eyelashes were sticking to her cheeks. She tried. I know that he, Tang Wei waited, patiently, with the interest of a scientist watching a chemical reaction in a flask. My wife did not finish the sentence. She simply lowered her head and began to cry, quietly, very quietly, like a small person on a large train platform. My God, I thought, with genuine curiosity. For the first time in 5 years, I am seeing her actual tears. They even look different, considerably less aesthetic. Tang Wei turned slowly to the room and said, now somewhat more gently, Ladies and gentlemen, my apologies for interrupting your agenda, but we are a little busy. We still have one unresolved matter in this hall. She nodded toward the side door, where Joe stood already halfway in the corridor, held by the two men in gray. His name is Joe Mingyu. He has been detained on a matter, and before he is taken away, Mr. Lin Hao has a few words for him. It will take 5 minutes. She looked at me. 5 minutes. Is that enough for him? 12 years, I said. 5 minutes is generous. Tang Wei nodded, stepped back. I took the microphone, stepped down off the stage, and walked across the room toward Joe. I walked across the room toward Joe, slowly, microphone in hand. The guests parted, not because anyone instructed them to, but because human beings have reflexes. When a man is walking past you who has just signed over 1,200,000,000,000 yuan in one click, you clear a path. Joe stood by the side door. The two men in gray held him by the elbows. The greenish color was gone from his face now. His face had become gray, like a November sidewalk. His lips were moving. I was sure he was praying, to whom I had no idea. Possibly to his old high school PE teacher. I approached, raised my hand. The two men in gray looked at me. I said to them, not loudly, but in such a way that the microphone would catch it as well, "Gentlemen, 5 minutes after that he is yours, entirely and forever." The senior of the two, slightly bald, tired eyes, nodded once. I noticed him step back slightly to give me a clear field of view with Joe. Joe tried to smile. It was the smile of a man whose gums had just gone into a cramp. "How?" he whispered. "Friend, we've known each other since first grade, remember?" "I remember," I said evenly, into the microphone, so the whole hall could hear. "I remember everything, Mingyu, so let me go in order, so that all of these lovely people can remember along with me. May 16th, I said, year 2013, school number 47, gymnasium, physical education class. I'm pulling myself up on the high bar. You walk up behind me, and at the exact moment my arms are extending, you yank me down by the foot. I fall from 2 meters onto my back, fracture of the right radius with displacement. You tell the teacher that I slipped on my own. The teacher believes you. Because you're the class monitor, and I am the boy whose mother has just died of cancer, and I do not have the energy to fight for the truth. Joe licked his lips. I continued. September 17th, year 2013. The school scholarship committee announces its results. The winner is me. The next morning, my application is found to contain altered grades in biology, not in my handwriting. The committee reverses its decision. The scholarship goes to you. Somewhere in the room, a woman I could not see, from the back, let out a soft "oh." February 22nd, year 2014. Sun Rui, a girl I had liked since 8th grade, and to whom I had confessed 3 months earlier, walks up to me at break and slaps me loudly. The slap echoes down the corridor. I do not understand why. An hour later, I find out you told her that I had been in the locker room with friends, discussing her body and taking bets on who would sleep with her first. I had never been in that locker room. I had no friends at the time after the fracture. Everyone in my year had drifted away from me, deciding I was strange. But Sun Rui believed you. She was a 17-year-old girl. You were 17. You told her this with the confidence of someone who believed the world owed him. Joe had stopped blinking. Within a month, I continued, you were dating her. Within 3 months, you had dumped her. I learned this only after I had moved to a different city for university, because in that one there was nothing left for me to stay for. The hall stood like a single carved stone. 300 phones recording. I knew by tomorrow morning this video would be in every social feed in the country. That was school, I said. Let's continue. How? Joe tried again. It was we were children. Children do not forge grades, Mingyu. Children pull each other's hair. Future financial directors forge grades. That was a rehearsal for your career. We are now moving to your career. July 5th, year 2020. 7 years after high school. My father, the director of a small bread factory, walks into an underground card club, not to play, to collect money. Club owes him for a flower delivery. He is met by Mr. Lin Jin. I turned my head toward my father-in-law. He was no longer on the floor. Somebody had thought to roll a chair over to him. He sat slumped, looking at his shoes. Mr. Lin Jin, I continued, arranges an impromptu game for my father, allegedly friendly, allegedly over a bottle of cognac. 3 hours later, Somebody slips my father an IOU for 800 million yuan, with his forged signature on it. Forged by whom? I turned my head back to Zhou. Mingyu, tell them, who forged my father's signature? Zhou slowly raised his head. I didn't. You went to art school from age 6 to 13, I said. You won a Student of the Year award for calligraphy. You could have managed it. You did manage it. Zhou looked at my father-in-law for a long time. It was his plan, he said quietly, not mine. Mingyu, my father-in-law exploded from his chair. Shut up. It was your plan. Zhou turned his entire body toward him. I only forged the signature. I was the executor. You said we needed a boy in the family through whom we could drain his father's business. You said Yue agreed. You said in 5 years we would all walk away with the money. Shut up, my father-in-law roared. Shut up, Zhou shrieked. They're walking me out in handcuffs, and you're sitting on a chair telling me to shut up? It's your plan. Thank you, I said into the microphone. Calmly. In the room, there was a single round of applause. One person, some happy soul in the second row. His neighbor elbowed him to silence quickly. I smiled at the happy soul. Don't apologize. I was about to do the same. At that moment, in one of the corridors of the city's central hospital, on the 5th floor, in cardiology, where her sick mother was lying, on a plastic bench sat a young woman. She was 28 years old, thin, in a simple beige jacket over a light sweater, with her hair hastily pulled up in a knot at the back of her neck. On her knees was a phone. On the phone, the live feed from the Megacorp Gala. Every national news outlet was carrying it in parallel. Sun Rui had not blinked in 5 minutes. She was looking at Zhou Mingyu's face, listening to the list of what he had done, reaching the part where her own name was spoken. And when the part about the slap in the school corridor was read out, she quietly lowered her head, pressed her palm to her face, and began to cry, not loudly, no scene. The tears simply came, and she sat on a hospital bench, in a corridor that smelled of bleach and other people's pain. I'm sorry, she said to the empty corridor. Lin Hao, I'm sorry. A nurse walked past, asked quietly whether everything was all right. Sun Rui nodded, said it was. The nurse went on. Sun Rui wiped her face with her sleeve, looked at the phone. Lin Hao on the screen stood straight, calm, in a badly fitting orange suit, saying something else into the microphone. She looked at this man and thought of a boy with a bandaged arm who, 15 years ago in a school corridor, after the slap she had given him, had looked at her with the face of someone who was sorry that she had been hurt. You didn't dump me, she said to the empty corridor again. I know, I've just learned, she cried again. Very quietly, and I, in the banquet hall, continued. From here forward the last 4 years, I said to Zhou into the microphone, I will go faster. Numbers frighten people in large quantities. I raised my hand on the big screens behind me, screens that an hour and a half earlier had been showing Megacorp's promotional video to upbeat music. The first page of a presentation appeared. Not mine. The one I had been assembling for 5 years, one document at a time. Slide 1. 12 shell companies, registered to nominal directors, mostly relatives of your housekeeper. Each company entered into consulting service contracts with Megacorp. Over 4 years, total billing, 182 billion yuan. The slide changed. Slide 2. The actual accounts of these shell companies. Of the 182 billion, 167 were routed to offshore accounts under your name. The remainder went into your real estate, a villa in Shenzhen, 2 apartments in Singapore, a house in Vancouver registered to your cousin. Slide 3. I know that you have a wife. Not mine. Not Lin Yu. A real one. A Canadian citizen. Anna Zhou, née Lopez. The 2 of you were married in Vancouver 18 months ago. You have a son. He is 18 months old. Lin Yue did not know. I turned my head toward Lin Yu. She was standing by the stage, mouth open, eyes wide. You? I said softly. How long have you been with him?
You?
5 years, and you did not know he was married to someone else for the last 18 months? Lin Yu lowered her head. It's complicated, I said. When you are being betrayed, you see many new things. For example, your own colleagues. Slide 4. An audio recording, May of last year? You in your office on the 17th floor, in conversation with Lin Jin. I'll read it aloud. The subtitles are on the screen. I understand the audio quality in a large hall is difficult. Large lines of subtitles appeared on the room's screens, and my own voice, not mine, his, Joe's, was read out coldly. Jin, in 2 years, I'll take Megacorp off you. You stays with me as a symbolic wife for the Chinese market. You I send into honorable retirement, maybe with a statue in the lobby. My father-in-law jerked on his chair. What? Oh, I said to him. You didn't know either? My apologies. I assumed you were in control. Zhou tried to lunge for the door. The 2 men in gray held him without much effort. Mingyu, I said into the microphone. 12 years, I counted. I have forgotten nothing. I did not skip one of your hits, and each of them, right now I am returning to you, publicly, precisely, with interest, in a single package. I lowered the microphone. You were the first person in my life who hurt me, when I was 15, without a reason. I would have forgiven, if it had only been you. I raised the microphone again. But it was not only you, and therefore tonight, you all walk the same path. You go first. Joe tried to spit in my direction. He did not succeed. His mouth was too dry. How? He rasped. I will get out. In 10 years. In 15. I will find you. The sentence is 22 years, I said. I have already spoken with the prosecutor. You go in young. You come out an old man. Lin Yue will, by then, most likely be working in a cafeteria. So you will have things to talk about when you meet again. If you meet again. The 2 men in gray began walking Joe toward the door. He took 6 steps and tried one last move. How? He turned his head. And what about Sun Rui? You know what I did to her. You never told her anything. You still haven't called her, have you? I looked at him. Sun Rui is sitting in a hospital corridor right now, I said evenly. Her mother has been in intensive care for the 2nd month. I am not calling her because she does not need me. Right now, she needs nobody except for her mother to recover. What I could do to help, I have already done anonymously. This morning. I lowered the microphone and added, more quietly, but the microphone caught it anyway. I do not let her down, Mingyu. I have long outgrown the man who could have let her down. Unlike you. Joe went silent. He was walked out across the room. In the black police vehicle at the rear exit of the banquet hall, Zhou Mingyu sat alone, hands cuffed. In front of him, a plastic divider separating him from the driver. The car had not yet pulled away. The driver was waiting for a signal from the senior officer. And at that moment, in Zhou's pocket, his phone vibrated. Police protocol allowed one message, a courtesy goodbye to family. Technically, Zhou, with difficulty, with the tips of his cuffed fingers, fished out the phone. The screen showed the name, Anna, home. A message of 3 words, filing for divorce. Good luck. Zhou stared at those 3 words for a long time. Then the phone was gently taken from him by the officer who had climbed into the back seat next to him. The car pulled away. In the banquet hall, 2 minutes after Zhou had been let out, people began to approach me. Slowly at first, one at a time, the ones who had the courage. These were people who, an hour ago, had been looking through me. The head of the city's Developers Association, the president of the bank where my wife had taken out her car loan, a famous film director who, 18 months ago, in my presence, had said, "Clean up the dust over here, my good man." They came and extended their hands. Mr. Lin Hao, please forgive me if... Mr. Lin Hao, I have long wanted to. Mr. Lin Hao, we have always sensed in you. I looked at them and did not shake their hands. Not deliberately. I was holding the microphone in one hand, and the other hand simply would not lift. Some nerve was crossed, as if a wire had been pulled. One of the men who had extended his hand stood for a moment, did not understand, and slowly lowered it. His face for a second looked offended. Then he realized that being offended was not allowed tonight, and he composed it back to neutral. Tonight, they want my hand, I thought, watching these faces. Tomorrow they will forget I was a janitor. In a year, they will say they always knew I was special. In 10 years at my funeral, these same people will give speeches about how wise I was. And old Wang, I thought next. will shake my hand exactly once when I offer him the directorship, and that one handshake will be enough to last me the rest of my life. I raised the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, my apologies. I understand that you have many questions, and that many of you have something urgent to say to me. I will ask you to wait. A pause. We have one more conversation tonight in this room. Mr. Lin Jin, my former father-in-law, is still sitting on his chair and waiting for me to pay him attention. I turned my head to my father-in-law. My father-in-law looked up at me, and for the first time the entire evening, for the first time in 5 years, I saw real fear in his eyes. Jin, I said softly.
Come here.
Lin Jin rose from his chair very slowly, the way old men get up from a bus seat, holding on to the railing. He was holding on to the back of the chair. He took 3 steps in my direction, stopped at the foot of the stage, lifted his head.
How? He said. Son.
I said nothing. I understand. I was not perfect. I made mistakes. But we are family. We share a surname. The name Lin is your name too. Consider what will people think if you destroy the name Lin in front of the whole city. They will think Hao is the same kind of man. They will think Hao is just Lin Jin in a younger body. It will damage your name as well. I waited for him to finish. Mr. Lin Jin, I said into the microphone, the Lin name is the name of the woman whom 5 years ago you forced into marriage with an unloved man for the sake of your own financial schemes. That is not family. That is bookkeeping. In the hall, somebody exhaled. And as for my own name, I continued, my name is not Lin. My father was Zheng Guangming. I was born under the surname Zheng. I took a double surname, Lin Zheng, at the wedding. And 1 year after the wedding 5 years ago, I filed for restoration of a single surname.
Zheng. The paperwork has been sitting at City Hall, signed and stamped, for 3 years. I was waiting for the moment when it would need to be used.
I reached into my inner jacket pocket, took out a folded sheet. Tonight is that moment. Effective tomorrow morning, I am officially Zheng Hao. The name Lin, I have never considered my own. I wore it like somebody else's overcoat. I unfolded the sheet, held it up so the screens could capture it. Signature, stamp, date, 3 years ago. On the large screens appeared an image of a certificate of name change with the seal of City Hall, with Lin Jin's signature. Oh, I said to my father-in-law, and here is your signature too. You signed it as head of household. Do you remember? 3 years ago I came to you with this paper. I told you that I needed to resolve an old legal matter regarding a folder of my father's documents. You signed it without looking. You didn't even ask what it was. I am not thanking you, but I want you to know, without your signature, this would have taken me an additional year. My father-in-law looked at the paper on the screen. I don't remember when. Of course you don't remember. In that month you signed 38 papers for me. All of them were signatures on small household matters. Payment for water at the country house. Consent for garage repair. I slipped them in, 1 a week. Tonight, every one of them is working for me. That too is bookkeeping. Only mine. My father-in-law slowly sank to the floor, right at the base of the stage, to his knees. It was not planned. His legs simply stopped working. Fine, I said. Since we are now speaking of bookkeeping, let me show one more piece of material. I have been keeping it in 3 copies for 5 years, and I had thought I would never show it. But tonight, since everyone is watching, I nodded toward the screens. Slide 1. July 5th, year 2020, 2246. The Underground Card Club, Silver Dragon, basement of the Pearl Hotel. South entrance surveillance camera. On the screens appeared grainy black and white footage, a basement corridor. In frame, my father-in-law, younger, without the belly. He stood at the door, embracing my father. I watched my father on the screen. 5 hours until your sentence, I thought. You don't know it yet. Slide 2. Camera, inside the gaming room. Table, cards. My father and Mr. Lin Jin sitting across from each other. The game has been going for 2 hours. Mr. Lin Jin is winning brazenly. 3,000 yuan, small change. The footage changed. Table, cards. My father-in-law, smiling, collecting modest winnings. Slide 3, 2317. The club host approaches the table. He whispers something in Mr. Lin Jin's ear. Mr. Lin Jin nods. The host leaves. 2 minutes later, he returns with a new deck of cards for Mr. Lin Jin. Footage. Close-up of my father-in-law's hands. He accepts the deck, and very carefully, very professionally, like a stage magician, he pulls 4 cards from his jacket sleeve, aces, and tucks them into the deck the host has just brought. A real, unfeigned, multi-voiced gasp rose from the hall. Slide 4, I said into the microphone. The game resumes with the new deck. The deck in which Mr. Lin Jin knows exactly where the 4 aces are. 20 minutes later, he will accidentally draw those 4 cards in one hand. My father, holding an honest hand, will raise the stakes because someone has told him please raise for the entertainment value. We will give it back afterward. This is a joke hand. My father raises to 800 million yuan and loses. Slide. A recorded close-up of my father's face. It was the first time I had looked at this face in 2 years. I usually did not re-watch the materials. I only archived them. My father's face was bewildered, like a child who had just been shown a trick he did not understand. Slide 5. 4 hours after the game, my father came home, locked himself in his study. In the morning, I found him on the floor. Stroke. He died 2 months later without regaining consciousness. Mr. Lin Jin did not come to the funeral. He sent a wreath. On the wreath, the card read, "To a brother, gone too soon." The silence in the hall was total. Nobody moved. My father-in-law sat on his knees at the foot of the stage, his head down.
July 6th, I said, the day after the game.
Mr. Lin Jin came to my father's home. My father was still conscious, still in the hospital, and laid before him the IOU, the forged one. Forged, as we have established tonight, by Zhou Mingyu. With the neat signature my father had never written, and he said, "Sign that you acknowledge the debt. Otherwise, your family ends up on the street. 800 million. My father refused to sign. On the 7th day after, he had a second stroke because he had understood what had happened. He died within a day. I lowered my head for a second, raised it. 2 weeks later, I came to your office, Mr. Lin Jin, with my father's IOUs, the company debts, the medical bills, and you said to me, "I will give you my daughter, Lin Yu. You will enter the family. The debt will be forgiven." The silence in the hall was now so absolute that you could hear, 3 rows back, someone accidentally clicking a cigarette lighter. I agreed, I said to my father-in-law. On the same day, not because I did not understand what had happened, because I understood everything from the first second. I agreed because at that very moment, inside my head, the voice of the mega cashback system spoke for the first time, a system I was seeing for the first time. And the system said to me, patience is the best multiplier. I smiled at my father-in-law. I was patient for 5 years, and tonight I am cashing it out. In the dressing room behind the stage, in a small chamber with mirrors and 3 chairs, Lin Yu sat on the floor beside the door. Her dress was crumpled. Her mascara had streamed down to her chin. Her shoes lay separately, one on its left side, one on its right. In her hand was a phone. She was dialing a number, the 6th in the past 7 minutes. "Mr. Chen," she said into the receiver, in a voice she was trying to make collected. "This is Lin Yu. I urgently need an interview tomorrow morning on your channel. Live broadcast. I am prepared to give it for any fee." Mr. Chen, the elderly editor-in-chief of the city's largest media holding, answered after a pause. "Madam Lin, I have sympathy for you. But my holding company was acquired this evening at 1840 by Tanglin Capital. I have just received instructions on editorial policy for the next 6 months. Among them, there is a clause. Do not publish material containing interviews with members of the Lin family, Jin, Yu, without separate written authorization from the shareholders' press office. I cannot. But you personally, you have known me since I was a child." "Madam Lin," Mr. Chen said gently, "I have known you since you were a child, so let me be direct with you. I would have refused even without the instructions. As of tonight, the gala clip has 60 million views on social media. By tomorrow, it will be 300 million. Your interview would destroy my holding. I will not take it, and nobody in this city will take it." "I'm sorry." Dial tone. Lin Yue looked at the phone for a long time. Then slowly, she dialed the next number. The 7th, Within 2 minutes, her dressing room was silent again. All 7 of the people she had called turned out to be working for me already. She set the phone down on the floor, covered her face with her hands, and sat that way for about 5 minutes. And then she did something I had not expected. She stood up, smoothed her dress, picked up her shoes, walked to the mirror, took out her makeup case, and began, very carefully, millimeter by millimeter, to repaint her face. Green tea does not surrender on the first hit. Green tea goes in for a second pass. In the banquet hall, the financial summaries on the big screens continued to update in real time. "Lin Jin," I said to my father-in-law, "since you are already kneeling in front of me, let me simply bring you up to date on certain news items. They concern you personally. Would you like to hear them?" He did not look up. Slide 1956. Your personal accounts at 3 banks have been frozen by court order as part of an investigation opened this evening into falsification of financial reporting, tax evasion, and coercion in transactions. The frozen sum is approximately 2 billion yuan. That is all of your liquid funds. His face had begun to tremble. Slide 2003. Your villa on Damascus Hill, 2,000 square meters, has been listed at auction as collateral against Megacorp's corporate debt to Tanglin Capital. The auction will be held tomorrow morning. The opening bid is 1 yuan. He lifted his head. His eyes had become like a fish's, large, expressionless. Slide 2007. Your private aircraft, a Gulfstream G65, registration B8888, a lucky number, congratulations, has been re-registered to its new owner. Me, the technical documentation was completed tonight at 1842. If tomorrow you wish to fly somewhere, I will be happy to sell you a commercial ticket at a fair price. Somebody in the hall laughed nervously, immediately fell silent. Slide 2009. Your bank account in Switzerland. Yes, Mr. Lin Jin. I know about it, please don't be surprised. Has been frozen at the request of the Financial Crimes Division under International Cooperation Protocol. The sum is approximately 180 million yuan. Unfortunately, you will not see this money either. I lowered the microphone, then raised it again. This, Mr. Lin Jin, is what remains of your 5 years of family labor. 0. The state pension you will receive in 2 years will be approximately 800 yuan a month. That is the same sum with which you, 5 years ago, so generously supported my dying father. I am returning it to you. My father-in-law covered his face with his hands, and for the first time the entire evening he wept. Not theatrically, the way his daughter wept. Not loudly, the way Joe wept. Quietly, heavily, the way an old man weeps the first time in his life when nobody owes him anything. A strange feeling, I thought, watching him. I wanted this for 5 years. Now I'm watching it and feeling almost nothing, only tired. I raised the microphone. Enough, I said to the hall. I am done with him. Let him sit, breathe. Listen to what comes next. Perhaps it will help him understand the world he was building. I turned toward the side door. Chen, I said into the microphone, addressing the senior security officer. Be so kind. Bring Mr. Wang. He is currently in the basement closet, drinking tea after his shift, as he always does. Chen nodded and stepped out. 5 minutes later, during which I said nothing in the hall, simply stood and looked at the ceiling, and 500 guests waited in silence with me. The side doors opened. Into the hall walked old Wang in his work jacket, with a rag at his belt, in rubber slippers over his socks, with a half-finished mug of tea in his hand. Chen walked beside him, gently, holding his elbow, as if Wang were an elderly relative. Wang was blinking quickly. He clearly did not understand what was happening. Chen had told him, Mr. Lin Hao is asking for you. Please come. And Wang had not even had time to change. He stopped at the foot of the stage, set the mug of tea down at the edge of the nearest guest's table. They made space for him with respect, took the work glove off his right hand, raised his eyes. Son, he said, did I put something in the wrong place again? The hall laughed, warmly, releasing. I smiled. Old man, I said, come up on the stage, please. Wang climbed carefully, 1 step at a time. I extended my hand. He grabbed it like a drowning man tightly. All fingers came up. He stood beside me, small, lean in his faded jacket, and on the stage in the middle of the Megacorp gala, In a hall of 500 city elites, there stood two people. Me, in a badly fitting orange suit that had cost 2,000 yuan, and old Wang in a work jacket with a rag. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said into the microphone, "allow me to introduce. This is Mr. Wang Changming, the head janitor of Megacorp for the past 18 years. The hall was silent. This, I turned my head to Wang, is the single human being in this building who for 5 years treated me as a human being, who poured me tea, cheap but hot, every morning, who called me son, without irony, without calculation, without a hidden agenda, whose heart hurt when my arm hurt, who did not know that I was not a janitor, and who never knew because I never told him." Wang was blinking. From his eyes, slowly, tears began to fall. "Mr. Wang," I said into the microphone, "as of this minute, you are appointed Director of Security and Operations of Megacorp Holdings. This is the first decree of the new owner. The paperwork will be ready by morning. Your salary will be set at the figure previously paid to Mr. Zhou Mingyu in the position of Vice President, 8 million yuan per month, plus a service apartment in the new administrative building, plus a car with driver, plus a full medical package for your family, including your granddaughter." Wang opened his mouth and closed it and opened it again. "Son," he said. "I am not, old man," I said quietly, off microphone, leaning toward him. "I promised. Remember, I told you this morning, after tonight I would offer you something. I am offering." Wang looked at me. "Son," he said, I'm a janitor. I'm not a director. I don't know how. You are the single person in this building," I said loudly into the microphone, "to whom I can entrust the safety of 5,000 of my new employees. Because you are the single person who has not tried to steal anything from me in 5 years. Your subordinates will be experienced deputies who know paperwork. You will decide whom to trust and whom not to trust, and for that you do not need a job title. For that you need character." I turned to the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, please give Mr. Wang 1 minute of applause." The hall stood up, all 500. The applause came slowly, gradually. First, those who understood it first, then everyone. These were, I believe, the first genuine round of applause in the entire history of Megacorp's galas. Wang stood and cried, silently, large heavy tears. He made no attempt to wipe them away. I put my hand on his shoulder. He held on to the rag at his belt as if it were a railing. When the applause died down, Wang turned to me. "Son," he said, "I need to tell you something. It's been a long time, about my granddaughter. I never told you, but—" "I know," I said. "She recovered a year ago. The surgery was successful. She is now in 3rd grade, doing well in school, likes to draw cats." Wang froze. "How do you—" "I paid for the surgery," I said quietly. "Anonymous transfer 3 years ago. 800,000 yuan. When you told me, and then never brought it up again, that same evening, I sent the money to pediatric cardiology number 3. I have followed her recovery. I have photographs of her at her kindergarten graduation. I asked the nurses for them. I know that she wants to become a veterinarian. I have already bought her the book Anatomy of Domestic Animals. It has been sitting in my closet for 3 years. I'll give it to you tonight. You can pass it to her from me." Wang slowly sank to his knees, right there on the stage, in front of 500 guests, in front of 300 phone cameras, in front of my former father-in-law, who was also on his knees but 10 meters away. I bent down, took him by the shoulders, lifted him up. "Old man, please, not in front of me. Son, never in front of me. Do you understand? Never. Your granddaughter is alive because you are her grandfather. I simply happen to be nearby and to have money. This is not a gift. It is gratitude for the tea." Wang began to cry truly. I embraced him, once, briefly. He was lean and smelled of laundry soap, and at that moment, the door of the dressing room slammed open at the back of the hall. And out of the back room walked Lin Yu, with fresh makeup, with fresh tears in her eyes, with a new roll on her face. "How?" she said loudly, so that everyone would hear. "Please, let me speak." Lin Yue walked across the room along the same path that, 10 minutes earlier, Tang Wei had walked. Only Tang Wei had walked like a woman who had chosen her route. Lin Yu was walking like a woman who for the first time in her life did not know where she was going. Her makeup was fresh, her tears preloaded, her dress smoothed out. I watched and counted the seconds between her steps. It came out to about 1 second per step, slow, dramatic. The walk of a supporting actress given a single scene in the finale. She approached the foot of the stage. Stopped. "How?" she said. Her voice trembled in exactly the right places. "I understand. I am guilty. I was weak. I was foolish. They broke me when I was 18. When my father brought me to Joe and said, 'This is your fiancé,' I did not choose anything. I was a child to whom no was not permitted." The hall listened. Guests love these moments. It is free reality TV of the highest grade. "All this time," she continued, raising moist eyes toward me, "I loved you in my own way. I know it was wrong. I did not know how to show it. I grew up in a family where warmth was not shown. I thought that if I were cold, I would be like my mother. It was a defense, not contempt. The script she has been rehearsing in front of a mirror for 5 years, I thought, with genuine interest. The lighting is visible. The rhythm is rehearsed. The word child, mandatory emotional trigger. Cues from her favorite soap opera, Wedding in the Rain, Season 3, Episode 14, the heroine's monologue in the finale. I looked at her and did not react. "Give me a chance," Lin Yue said, and her voice finally cracked, also right on time. "Not for the marriage, I understand. You're not coming back. Just let me speak, in front of everyone, so that I can look at myself in the mirror later." She fell silent, waited, perfectly timed. "Speak," I said into the microphone. Yu Wei blinked. Apparently, she had not expected permission. "What?" she asked. I said, "Speak. Tell me how you loved me. I am listening. Everyone is listening. We all want to understand what it looks like. Being loved the way you loved me. Maybe we can learn something." Yu stood there for 10 seconds. Then she began. "I cared for you. In my own way. I made sure your shirts were clean, that you had dinner. A small clarifying point," I said, raising a hand. "Just to avoid gaps. My shirts were laundered by our housekeeper Zhang Lin. I paid her out of my janitor's salary because you, Madam Yue, twice a year updated the list of people who do not need to be paid for their work since they live in my house. Zhang Lin made that list both times. I paid her on the side out of my 4,000 yuan a month. As for dinner, thank you for mentioning it. For the past 5 years, I have eaten cup noodles on the 17th floor from a vending machine. I even had a special discount card for janitors. Madam Yue, in what specific year did you make me dinner?" Lin Yuwen went silent. "Don't remember the exact date? Let me remind you, never. In 5 years, not once. Sorry for the interruption. Please continue." Yue licked her lips. They trembled. I took care of your clothes, already covered. What else? I wanted to talk with you, but you were silent. I said evenly. "On March 3rd of last year, I came home with a fever of 39.2 degrees. I lay down in the guest room because you would not let me into the bedroom. Remember, you said you had feathers in the pillows that gave me asthma. I lay there with the fever. You came home at 10 in the evening with Joe. You walked past my room into your bedroom. Half an hour later, you came out and asked me to go downstairs and order a pizza because Joe is hungry. I got up, went downstairs, ordered, brought it up to your floor. My temperature was at 39.3 by that point. I left the pizza by your door, went back to my room and passed out. I came to before dawn on the floor of my own guest room. Do you remember that evening? It was about 5 or 6 words spoken on your side for the whole evening. Downstairs, order, Joe is hungry. Thanks, good night. It was more words than we exchanged on average in a week. The room was silent. Somebody was filming greedily with both hands. That, I continued, was the warmest interaction between us in the entire year 2024. I counted. I have all our dialogues recorded, 18 over the year. Of those, 14 were about garbage, the faucet, the housekeeper, or the car. 4 were about divorce. Of those 4, you started 3, and 1 was Joe, at the dinner table, in a friendly way, asking whether it wasn't time for you and Yue to formalize a separation so that you could both breathe. Lin Yue looked at her father. I caught that glance. It was not the glance of a daughter looking for support. It was the glance of someone looking for someone to pass the ball to. How? She said in a hoarse voice. I can't go on like this. You are pushing me to an extreme. I will tell the truth. There we go, I thought. Here comes the next scene. God, how predictable.
Speak, I said gently. She turned to her father. Papa, she exhaled, loudly. To the whole room. Papa, this is all you. You broke me.
You forced me to marry him. You said it would be for a year. You said we would divorce afterward, and I would get part of his father's factory. You promised that Joe would be my real husband after the divorce. You promised. My father-in-law, kneeling 10 meters away from us, slowly raised his head. You, shut up. I will not shut up, she shrieked. Everyone is hearing me now, and I am going to say everything. I was not bad. I just did what I was told. Papa, tell them. Tell them it was you. You are a fool, my father-in-law said tiredly. Be quiet. I am not a fool. I obeyed. I was raised to obey. I grew up in a house where a daughter has no voice. I had no choice. He broke me, She was jabbing her finger at her father. 300 phones around her were recording and recording. I could already imagine that within 12 hours, the audio of this monologue would be available in 107 languages worldwide. Thank you, Yue, I thought with very precise gratitude. You have just done exactly what I needed. I prepared this scene for you. I knew you would break down on him. I knew that green tea, under stress, first cries, then accuses whoever is nearby. Thank you for not letting your director down. I lowered the microphone, waited until her voice grew hoarse. When she had gone silent, breathing hard, mascara streaming down her chin again, I slowly raised the microphone back to my mouth. You, I said, you have just, in front of 500 witnesses and 300 recording devices, confessed that you entered into marriage with me deliberately, with premeditation, with a plan for future divorce and financial damage against me. That, in legal terms, is called marriage, entered into for the purpose of deception and infliction of property damage. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yue froze. What? She whispered. That is the first thing. The second, you have just on camera given up your father. He, as you understand, will answer for that on his own, without any help from me. I do not even have to testify. I have plenty of material as it is, but your audio will be quoted at his trial, which means you have just done very useful work for me, free of charge. I could even thank you again, but I won't, so you don't get full of yourself. At that moment, in a closed analytical chat of 40 members, the chat where I was Cicada and she was T, Tang Wei opened the conversation and typed a single word, closing. 2 seconds later replies. Which operation is this? Asked an anonymous member called Mina. Personal, T replied. What is the target? There is no public target. This was a personal story. Cicada? Mina pressed. Cicada is on the stage right now. He will stop being Cicada in an hour. And the last message from T for the day appeared in the chat. Lol. And she closed the tablet. You, I said, lift your head. I want you to hear this eye to eye. Direct. No mediator. Lin Yu raised her head. The mascara on her face was no longer makeup. It was a pattern. 2 long streaks from her eyes to her chin. We were never married, I said. Yue blinked. What? Let me repeat. We were never married. Legally. From the very beginning. How? You've lost your mind. We have the certificate. You have the certificate. I have a document of annulment. I nodded toward the screens. On the large screens appeared a color photograph, the official letterhead of City Hall's registry office, with the seal, with the signature. Date: January 28th, year 2021, 4 months after our ceremony. I filed a petition for annulment of the marriage on the grounds that my signature on the marriage certificate was forged. I had it compared with my signature samples at the military registration office, at the bank, and at the notary. The handwriting expert confirmed that the person who signed at the registry office was not me. I turned my head toward my father-in-law. That, Mr. Lin Jin, was also your handiwork. You signed for me at the registry office because on the day of registration, I was sick with the flu and did not go You remember. I asked you to postpone, and you said, "Don't be ridiculous. I'll arrange it all myself. Go lie down." I lay down, and you went to the registry office, wrote in my name, and signed for me. Perhaps you assumed that I had no signature samples available for comparison. Perhaps you did not think about it at all. Either way, you took an unnecessary risk. I turned back to Yue. 4 months after the ceremony, I filed the petition. 2 months later, there was a court decision. The marriage was declared void from the moment of its conclusion. The registry office issued me a certificate of annulment. I paused, which means that, legally, for the past 4.5 years, I have not been your husband. I have been your landlord. The apartment you lived in belonged to me through a shell company. I rented it to you for free because I was curious how long your scheme would stretch. It stretched 5 years. I won a bet with myself. I had bet on 7. Yue slowly sank to her knees. She simply folded, as if some internal hook on which everything had been hanging had broken. "This can't be," she whispered. "This can't be. You're lying. You're lying." "In your handbag, Yu," I said gently. "There is a document from the registry office regarding a change of status. I asked a courier to deliver it to you at 6 this evening, in your dressing room. The courier delivered. You did not open it. The envelope is in your handbag on the right side, under the mirror. Open it." Yue slowly picked up the handbag, took out a small white envelope, tore it open, unfolded it, and read, and began to cry truly. No longer theatrical, no longer for the cameras. Simply, as a 27-year-old human being who had just learned that the entire last 5 years of her life had been a play staged by other people's hands, and that the final bow had been taken without her. "How?" she said a minute later without raising her head. I can do something. I can give an interview, a talk show. I'll say you deceived me, that you held me hostage to your deception. That you," I said quietly. "Listen, off the record, just for you." I leaned closer to the microphone, so my voice would come through softly. "In addition to what you've seen tonight, I have one more folder, small, about 150 gigabytes. In it, your life, from age 12 to today. The story with your younger cousin Zhang Min, who drowned in the pool at your birthday party in 2010, and about whom you knew more than you told the police. The story with your best friend He Lan, whose university research project you stole at 17 and submitted under your own name. The story with your first man, a professor whom you later accused of harassment so that he would withdraw a lawsuit related to his collapsing marriage. I have all of it. I have never shown it to anyone. I never will show it to anyone. If you stay silent." Yue raised her head. Her eyes had become like the eyes of a dead fish. "If you go on a talk show," I continued, "all of this is on the air the next morning. I am not threatening you. I just want you to know the formula. Be silent. Live with what you have left. Don't be silent. Go to prison, most likely for complicity in the death of a younger girl at a birthday party. Choose." Yu laid the phone down beside her on the stage floor, in silence, and did not touch it again for the rest of the evening. "And one last thing," I said into the microphone. By now, even I was tired. By now, even I wanted this scene to be over. A final slide appeared on the screens, an audio file, cued to the 47th second of playback. September of year 2021, recording from a closed pavilion in Jasmine Lotus Park. Lin Yu speaking with Zhou Mingyu. "I have the recording, don't ask how. I'll just say that there were paid groundskeepers in that park whom I supported out of the system." I pressed play. Lin Yue's voice, 5 years younger but recognizable, came out of the speakers. "Mingyu, the plan is working perfectly. In 5 years, he will be either dead or in debt. Not my problem. The main thing is that the signature on the marriage contract stays mine. Father guarantees it. I trust him." Zhou's voice. "What if he suspects something?" Lin Yue. "Mingyu. He was mopping toilets in my family home before we married. He will be mopping toilets in our family home after the divorce. This man does not suspect anything. He only knows how to obey." Zhou's voice. "I love you." Lin Yu. "I know." And a short pause in which, even through the old recording, you could hear that they were smiling. I shut it off. "This," I said into the room calmly, "is my gift to you for the evening, from the man who only knows how to obey. And for the first time the entire evening, for the first time since I had broken the wine glass, since I had been asked to sign the divorce, since my father-in-law had laughed, I smiled. For real. Not coldly, not sarcastically, simply tired, relieved, the way a man smiles after he has carried something very heavy for 5 years and has just set it down on the ground. Enough, I said into the microphone. That's it. This chapter is closed. And I looked toward Tang Wei. Tang Wei was standing at the edge of the stage, not looking at you, not looking at my father-in-law, not looking at the guests. She was looking at me, and barely perceptibly, she nodded. Once. It meant time. Tang Wei walked up onto the stage, without hurry, with the same easy, unhurried pace with which she had walked into the room an hour earlier. She came up, took my elbow, and said evenly, calmly, without theater, simply as one adult addresses another, "Enough. Dinner is getting cold." I nodded, lifted the microphone to my lips one final time. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said into the room, "thank you for your hospitality. I am leaving. Tomorrow morning at 10, the new CEO of Megacorp Holdings assumes office. You will learn the name from our first press release. My today's wife, ex-wife, never was a wife, remains with the guests. Mr. Lin Jin remains in the hall until the investigators arrive. Mr. Zhou is already in the car. Mr. Wang assumes his new office on Monday. Everyone else, please, go home carefully. There will be many journalists on the streets tonight. I hope you all have alibis." The guests laughed quietly, in relief, not knowing how to behave anymore, but already understanding that the evening was over. I handed the microphone to the master of ceremonies. "Thank you," I said to him. "Call our HR department on Monday. I have not forgotten your salary." He nodded like a child. I turned to step down off the stage with Tang Wei, took 3 steps, and something tugged at my trouser leg. I looked down. Lin Yui was kneeling at the foot of the lowest stair, holding on with both hands to the cuff of my trousers. "How?" she whispered. 5 years. I waited 5 years. Give me at least the chance to explain, at least the chance to say that I made a mistake. At least that. I looked at her hands. These hands, I thought, have not once made me even a cup of tea in 5 years. And old Wang has made me 202 cups in 5 years, I counted. These hands are now holding on to my trouser leg because the entire room has left, and the trouser is the only thing they could reach. This is not love. This is the reflex of a drowning person. Tang Wei beside me did not move. She did not rush me. She stood quietly and waited for me to finish. "You," I said quietly, off microphone. "You did not give. You took." She raised her eyes. "I am taking back," I continued. "It is not punishment. It is bookkeeping." She blinked. Real tears began to fall. "And love?" she whispered. "There was no love, you. What if there was, in me? What if I did not know?" I looked at her for a long time. "If there was," I said, "in you, and you did not know, that is your problem, not mine. I am not the one who has to fix it." I carefully drew my trouser leg out of her fingers. She did not resist. Her fingers simply let go on their own. I took another step. Yui did not stand. She simply slowly lowered her forehead to the bottom step of the stage and stayed there. Not crying, not moving, as though all the air had finally gone out of her. When Tang Wei and I had walked halfway across the room toward the main doors, a shout came from behind me. "Lin Hao!" It was my father-in-law. From his chair, without standing. "You will regret this. I have connections. I will find a way. I will rise again." I stopped. A half step, did not turn, and almost simultaneously from the corridor where Zhou had been taken, came a second shout. Hoarse, through a closed door, through 2 guards, 12 years. "I will get out. I will find you." The hall went absolutely silent. I slowly turned my head, not my whole body, just the head, so that one frame on 300 phones would be remembered correctly. "Mr. Lin Jin," I said evenly, "I bought your connections 3 years ago. 3 out of 5 of your closest friends already have personal financial obligations to me. They will not let me down, but not you, me. If you rise, I will be the first to know." A pause. "Mr. Zhou, 12 years ago, you laughed at me in a school locker room. Tonight, 800 million people are laughing at you in a live broadcast. That is your new account balance. I have simply evened the ledger. I turned my head back and walked toward the exit. The main lobby of the banquet hall, marble, a 10-meter ceiling, 2 crystal chandeliers, frescoes of Chinese cranes. I did not remember what this lobby looked like from inside. I had never walked into it through the main entrance in 5 years. I had walked in through the service door in the basement, by the dumpsters. Now, I was walking through the center of that lobby with Tang Wei on my arm. On either side, a double row of guests. They had come out behind us, in silence. Nobody tried to stop me. Nobody tried to tug at my trouser leg a second time. Somebody I did not see who slowly clapped their hands. Once, then stopped, as if they had thought better of it. Don't applaud me, I thought. I have earned exactly 1 ovation tonight. I have already received it when they applauded old Wang. At the exit stood Chen, the senior security officer, the one who, an hour and a half earlier, had been the first to refuse to remove me on my father-in-law's orders. I stopped in front of him. Chen, I said. Thank you, Mr. Lin Hao. As of today, Zheng Hao. Chen blinked, thought, nodded. Mr. Zheng Hao. You have 2 daughters in school, I said. The older one is taking her university entrance exams in 2 years. Come see me in my office on Monday. I will sign a recommendation for her to our scholarship program. Chen opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Mr. Zheng Hao, you just come. Monday, 11 a.m. I nodded to him, walked past, and at the very exit, by the large glass doors I had never walked through before, stood old Wang, the jacket, the rag at his belt, the rubber slippers. In silence, I stopped, put my hand on his shoulder. Son, he said, won't you disappear? I will come to your birthday, old man, as always. In 2 weeks, you have a milestone birthday, by the way. 63. I have a gift prepared. I will bring it. Wang began to cry, silently. The tears of old people are heavy. They do not roll down. They stand in the eyes for a long time and then slowly stream. I embraced him. Once, briefly, so as not to drag it out. Then I released him and walked out into the night. Outside, it was cool. A light rain was falling. Tang Wei had been right. It had started exactly an hour later, as she had predicted. Her limousine was waiting at the steps. Igor, the driver, opened the rear door for us. We sat, I on the right, she on the left. The door closed softly with the rich sound of expensive cars. The noise of the hall stayed outside. Inside the limousine, it was warm and smelled of something pleasant, subtle. I could not identify what. We were silent for about 10 seconds. Tang Wei leaned down to a small compartment beneath the front seat, opened it, took something out, and extended toward me a white plastic bowl. Cup noodles, soy sauce, light spice, not hot. Exactly the same kind I had eaten every evening for 5 years on the 17th floor, out of a vending machine. I looked at the bowl, then at Tang Wei. Heard you eat this every evening, she said evenly. I took the bowl, opened the lid. From under the lid rose the familiar, cheap, warm steam. And for the first time the entire evening, I genuinely laughed. Not sarcastically, not coldly, simply, with relief. The way a man laughs when some very tight internal hook has just released. I do, I said. Old habit? Old. Tang Wei leaned back against the seat, closed her eyes for a second, opened them. This habit, she said, we keep. I looked at her. She was looking forward. At the road, she had a very beautiful jawline in the light of the night street lamps. You know, I thought, I have been very lucky. Not in having had a system, and not in winning tonight, but in the fact that, in a chat of 40 people from across the world, I happened to begin corresponding with this woman, of all of them, and that, in 2 years, she came to know me by my letters, better than anyone has ever known me by my face. I did not say this aloud. I simply began, in silence, to eat the noodles. Tang Wei flipped down her side visor mirror, turned to it, adjusted one strand of her hair, and I caught it out of the corner of my eye. For a second, she smiled at her own reflection. Morning. Not the next morning, the morning after that. Tanglin Capital, the 32nd floor of the new merged headquarters, the corner office. Outside the windows sunrise, the city wrapped in pink mist. On the desk of dark oak lay a folder. Gray, unassuming, without a logo, only an inscription handwritten on the cover. Next target. I sat in the chair. In front of me, a mug of coffee. Behind my back, on the wall, a full-height window. Tang Wei walked in without knocking. In this office, neither of us has the right to knock on the other's door. That was a condition of our partnership. We do not knock. Ready? She asked. I'll open it now. I picked up the folder. Opened it. On the first page, a photograph of a man in an expensive suit, about 45 years old, with the half-smile of a man who knows he has it all under control. This, Tang Wei said, sitting down across from me, is Huang Mingzhe, head of the Xianhe Trading Group, 6th on the Forbes list for our country. 18 years ago, your mother's class supervisor at Teachers College. Her advisor, the man who after her death received her academic work and published it under his own name. The man thanks to whom he became a doctor of science and was given the chair on which he later built his empire. I looked at the photograph. My mother. Now. How much does he have? I asked. Net assets, approximately 140 billion. Debt obligations, 220. Vulnerable points, grandson at Harvard. Falsified performance metrics at his subsidiary. To circumvent sanctions, I have the full documentation. I have been compiling it for 6 months, and most importantly, 3 years ago, he had a meeting with my father, at which both of them laughed about how one young widower has been left without a mother and without her papers. I closed the folder. Timeline? 3 months to completion, if you agree. I finished my coffee, set the cup down on the saucer. I looked out the window, at the pink sunrise. Once, I was broken in a school gymnasium, I thought. Today I own the city. But in this city, there are still many people who think they are above others. Many people who think that the dead do not come back for what was stolen from them. They will learn that the dead do come back. Through me? Agreed, I said to Tang Wei. Start. 3 months later, a small one-room apartment on the 4th floor of a residential building in a working-class district. The windows look out over a courtyard where cats meow by the dumpsters. Lin Yu sits at the table, folding her waitress uniform. It is her 4th shift of the week. Tips today, 120 yuan. Her mother's medication, by this point, requires 3,000 a week. Her mother's kidneys have failed. Her father is in prison. The Lin name has been erased from business circles. In this apartment, she rents the place under her mother's maiden name. On the wall above her bed, an old photograph she has not taken down. A wedding photograph. She and a young Lin Hao stand at the altar. He is looking into the camera. She is looking somewhere to the side. Yue picks up her phone, opens the news feed. The algorithm automatically shows her the top item of the day. At the top, a photograph of him and Tang Wei at an international business forum in Davos. They stand close to each other, not holding hands, but close. Behind him is a placard reading, Zheng Hao, chairman of the board of Tanglin Group. Speaker, Young Leaders of Asia Session. Headline, the most mysterious couple in global business. 2 years together, and they still have not confirmed their relationship. Lin Yue looks at the photograph for a long time, closes the phone. I thought he was a worm, she says to the empty apartment. Nobody answers. She puts her waitress uniform on a chair, lies down on the bed, fully dressed. And from this story, she does not reappear. A high-security prison, Guangdong province. A 4-man cell. A narrow window with a grate. Cheap bunks. Lin Jin sits on a lower bunk and holds a letter in his hands. It is the appeals court ruling. The 3rd and final instance. 12 years imprisonment, asset confiscation, loss of civil rights for 10 years following release. Lin Jin looks at the letter, then at his own hands. The hands of an old man with age spots. Hands that, 5 years ago, had switched a deck of cards in a gambling club. Hands that, over a lifetime, had shaken the hands of 53 ministers, 8 chairmen of boards of directors, 4 provincial governors. Hands that today hold a piece of paper saying that those 53 ministers, 8 chairmen, and 4 governors no longer remember him. He slowly folds the letter, places it under the pillow. At that moment, a guard walks past the corridor, glances through the window. Inmate Lin, On your feet. Corridor cleaning in 10 minutes. I'm not a janitor. Here, everyone is a janitor. Inmate Lin. Here there are no positions. Here there is only the mop. Lin Jin stands up, takes the gray uniform. Symmetry, I could have thought, had I been there to see him. I love symmetry. Midnight. The rooftop of Tanglin Tower. The 20th floor from the top. Below the city, lights. Thousands of windows. Somewhere far away, the whistle of a night train. On the rooftop, a simple bench. On the bench, Tang Wei and I. In her hand, a white plastic bowl of noodles. In mine, the same kind. We had just finished dinner at one of the most expensive restaurants in the city. Tang Wei had insisted that, to finish, we eat a bowl of cup noodles each on the rooftop, as if I were 28 again and still a janitor on the 17th floor. Are you happy? She asked quietly. I thought about it. I'm not sure I know what that is, I said. I think that knot in me has been broken since childhood. There was nobody around long enough for me to study how it is supposed to work. Tang Wei nodded, thought. But I do know, I added, that I am no longer a janitor, and I know that I am not afraid to wake up tomorrow. If that is not happiness, it is a very close relative. Tang Wei moved over, placed her head on my shoulder. She simply placed it. There was nothing else. No kisses, no vows, no words about always. Only the heavy, warm, trusting weight of her head on my shoulder, and 2 bowls of noodles on our knees, and the city beneath our feet. And I closed my eyes. And for the first time in 5 years, for 12 years, if I am being honest, there was complete silence inside my head. The mega cashback system was no longer ticking. I had turned it off a week ago. It had done its work, and the inner voice that had been counting down the seconds for 5 years was also silent. There was only the city, only her shoulder, only the noodles. And one last time, I said to myself in my head everything I had wanted to say to the people who would never hear me. They thought I was a poor janitor. They did not know that I had been leveling up the mega cashback ability. They did not know that every spit of theirs had been multiplied by 10,000. They did not know that my salary had been their pension. They did not know that silence is the loudest of all languages. Now they know. Tang Wei sighed quietly on my shoulder. I put one arm around her. The city beneath us burned with all its windows, and I was finally eating my noodles, for the first time in 5 years without a thought of the future, without a tally for tomorrow, without a plan for the next target, for the first time simply as a human being.